Shalom, shalom, peace and blessings. Now let's get straight into it. So now we'll finally finish off Revelation, the 20th chapter, and we'll be covering verses 7 all the way down to verse 15. And we're going to do this in two different sections essentially because as I was going through and listening to some of the other parts of my lessons on this chapter, I realized that there's some things that I could have explained better in terms of the context of this chapter, especially for brothers and sisters that aren't as familiar with the scriptures or in general just this chapter. So now for this last part, I also want to kind of go back over the beginning of this chapter and the verses too as well, and add some additional context and take my time on it just a little bit more as well. Now, look at me saying take my time, and I believe it's like the sixth part of Revelation 20, but it really could have been more. And I just like doing more than what I already see out there on YouTube, just from what I've seen out there on Revelation chapter 20 and, on other chapters in Revelation 2 as well. I wanted to do more than just a 1:30 to 45-minute breakdown. You know what I mean? Right. So anyway, I want to address something here first. The first thing I want to talk about is the time skip that brothers say that happened in this chapter. Most brothers will say, I won't say most brothers, but most of the brothers I know at least, they say that Revelation, the 20th chapter, kind of dips in and out. It starts in the past, in the future, past, in the future. And I don't really believe so in my perspective. Okay. I'm going to make my case for that. We're going to focus on Revelation chapter 20, verses 7 through 10 first, because that is the next part. But I also want to go back up here just for a second and add some context. Now, this is the time skipping that brothers are referring to. Now, you have a time period in verses 1 through 3. So verses 1 through 3 in Revelation chapter 20 is referring to the time period where, because if we go at the very beginning here, John the Apostle, a.k.a. John a Revelator, a.k.a. John of Patmos, the author of the book of John in the Gospels, and also 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. Now, he's the one that is given this prophecy here in Revelation chapter 20 and all the books of Revelation, by the way. Now, the events that took place in verses 1, 2, and 3, that happened around 300 years or so after John first received this revelation or this prophecy. Okay, because John received this prophecy somewhere around the 1st century. All right, and this all kicked off around the 4th century or so. Okay, so you have that time period. Now, and this lasted all the way until around the 14th century, so around 1,000 years. Now, it says here that after that, he must be loosed a little season. So now we have a different time period in verses 4, 5, and 6. But verses 4, 5, and 6 actually do take place not right after, but it takes place after verses 3, 4. Verses 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Where it says, and I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Yahushua and for the word of the Most High, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands. And they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. Now, this took place after the events in verse 3. And it also says that Satan, which is Esau, aka the so-called white man, he must be loosed a little season, meaning out of captivity. Now, this little season is the time period that we're living in right now. So you could say it skipped ahead, but you could say it skipped ahead, I guess, but also it did take place afterwards anyway. So the reign of Christ is going to happen after Christ comes back in his second coming. Okay. What we hear in the scriptures called the day of the Lord. All right. So that's going to happen after the day of the Lord. Christ and his elect will reign for 1,000 years. And keep in mind that when it says 1,000 years, this 1,000 years may not be precisely 1,000 years. It could be more, it could be less. It could be 100 years. 1,000 years really is a number for completion. So this may not even be literal. Okay. But like I said, the little season, just want to touch on that really quickly. When it says loose a little season, this is also in the scriptures. Daniel chapter 9 calls it, I believe, 1 week. Yeah. Matter of fact, yeah, Daniel 9 calls it 1 week, just that last week in that prophecy. Then Revelation chapter 13 calls it 40 and 2 months. Also in Revelation chapter 12, it's called 1,260 days. And also you have, I believe in Revelation chapter 12 too as well, it's called a time, times and a half a time. Okay. All of these time periods all equal the same thing, 3.5 years. Okay. Or 3.5 times, which really represents that time period that we're in right now before Yahushua comes back. Okay. So in a sense, it's not really a time skip. Okay, because at the end of verse 3 here, it tells us that Satan will be loose a little season anyways. Okay, and again, once Yahushua comes back, that's when you have that 1,000-year rulership where Yahushua and the elect, okay, will be taking the nations captive and making them keep the statute, laws, and commandments. And if they don't, they're going to die. All right, that's pretty much it. On that. And then now let's go back to verses 7 through 10. And this is what we're going to focus on. All right. Hopefully that provided some additional context for the brothers that were asking questions about the time skip and when these time periods took place, which we have another instance of this right now where brothers say that verses 7 through 10 actually took place before verses 4, 5, and 6. And I also respectively decline that notion too as well. I don't necessarily agree, but I will make my case for it and show you exactly why. Now, we did touch on verses 7 through 10 briefly, and I want to say part 2 or 3. I briefly touched on it, but now we're going to finally dive in. Because let's read verse 7. All right, first. It says, Satan freed, doomed. And then you see Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39 being precepted here. Okay, because everyone pretty much knows that the events mentioned in verses 7 through 10 is directly alluded to in the quote unquote Old Testament in Ezekiel chapter 38 and verse 39. In chapter 39, excuse me. So let's get it. Let's read verse 7. Now it says Revelation chapter 20 and verse 7. And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. Now, brothers who say that this happened before Christ's return or before the 1,000-year rulership, they say that this 1,000 years or this the end of the 1,000 years, because there are 2 different 1,000-year periods. Okay, you have the reign with Christ for 1,000 years, and then you also have Esau's captivity for 1,000 years. That's pretty clear. That's really not to be debated. Once you read this, you can clearly tell that. But what is to be debated, or what brothers and sisters debate on, is when this 1,000 years are expired here. Is it referring to the end of Christ's rulership? Not the end of Christ's rulership, excuse me, the end of this first reign with Christ 1,000 years, or the end of Esau's captivity. Okay, which when I say Esau, I'm referring to the devil, Satan, the dragon, that old serpent, when he's loose out of his prison. Okay, brothers say that he must be loosed a little season. And then when 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. This is referring to directly at the end of that verse. And I don't believe so. Okay. And again, we're going to dive into exactly why I say that. Now let's get verse 8. And for brothers and sisters that, just bear with me. Bear with me. If you're not familiar with what I'm saying, you'd have to, kind of watch other brothers' perspective on this chapter or something to that extent, because if you're not familiar, then you may not know what I'm referring to. But either way, I'm just doing that for the brothers and sisters that actually know, a little bit more, in detail, or more familiar with this chapter. But anyways, let's go. Verse 8. And shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. So this battle here, all right, I believe is going to take place after the 1,000-year reign with Christ. And then at that time, you're going to have Esau, aka Gog, that's going to try to come out of his captivity to try to attack the children of Israel. Okay. And then at that point, he's going to be destroyed. Now, it's so much going on here that we have to just, we might as well just jump straight into it. Why did I say that Gog here is Esau? Let's get that really quickly. Let's get that. Let's start here at Ezekiel chapter 38, because like I said, this is where you have, more in detail of exactly what's going on in Revelation chapter 20. You see that described also in Ezekiel, the 38th and 39th chapter. So let's get it. Ezekiel chapter 38 and verse 1. And the word of the Lord, or the Most High, came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. So one thing that we can determine now is that Gog is actually a prince, and Magog, which we read about here, is a land. I know in verse 8 in Revelation 20, it says Gog and Magog, but Magog is the land. Now, if you've seen the other parts of this lesson, then you know that Magog is the original Japhetic lands that covers right around the Caucasus Mountains. Okay. Now, who lives or lived in the Caucasus Mountains that will live there back again when they're put into captivity when Yahushua returns? Who is it? No other than Esau. Okay, but let's prove that though. Let's look at Gog and Magog in the concordance here. Well, first, actually, I said a Japhetic name. So, matter of fact, let's get Genesis chapter 10. I have this pulled up. Let's start at verse 1. Now, these are the generations of the son of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them are sons born after the flood. Verse 2, the sons of Japheth, Gomer and Magog, and Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshech, and Tiras. Verse 3, and the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, and Riphath, and Togarmah. So now we're seeing some of these similar names. You remember you had Tubal and Meshech and Togarmah, on the map. And we had that mentioned here in Revelation chapter 20, verse 8. Magog at least is there. And then in Ezekiel chapter 38, you had set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. So one may be saying, in verse 3 too, and say, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, or the Most High, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. So one may be saying, hey, you just said that these were the name of Japhetic nations, or the men of Japheth, or Japheth, excuse me. So these are the sons of Japheth, Magog and Javan and Tubal. So why am I saying that it's Esau? It's very simple. So Esau, he takes over lands and then calls himself the name of the land that he conquers instead of his ancestral name. Okay? Does that make sense? Well, let's prove it. Let's just prove it. All right, let's prove it. First, actually, let's go into Magog. Let's go to the concordance of Gog and Magog, and then I'll explain exactly what I meant in that last statement there. So this is H1463 Gog. So this is the Hebrew word for Gog, the one we read about in Genesis, the 10th chapter, instead of the one that's in Revelation chapter 20 in verse 6 and 7. Okay. In verse 8. In verse 8. So it says Gog, mountain. Let's look at the different definitions here, because one says mountain, or one says a Reubenite, son of Shemaiah, but I don't think it's that one. So we can conclude that it's going to be definition B here that says the prophetic prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal, and Magog, the prophetic prince. So even they are acknowledging that Gog is not the actual lineage of Gog. So that's not who's going to be coming against the children of Israel. Okay. It's going to be, it's going to be another nation that's given this name here in the scriptures, but not the actual nation itself. That's why it says a prophetic prince. Okay. Gog, of uncertain derivation. Gog, the name of an Israelite. Also of some northern nation. So if it was of Gog, they would probably just say that. Okay, but it's clear to see here that the Most High is using Gog and Magog. They're using that name, but it's actually referring to another nation. Okay, definition 2 again. Gog of the land of Magog, prince of Rosh, Meshach, and Tubal. Okay. See here, it says Gog, of the prince of the land of Magog. Ezekiel 38, 2, 3, 14, verses 16 and 18. Ezekiel chapter 39 and 1 and verse 11. Also of the Rasi, Mashai, and Tebarani, which is essentially just Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal. That's what this is referring to. And then it says, who is to come with great forces from the extreme north? The extreme north. Remember that. Now, who is from the extreme north? Who's going to be banished back to that land? To invade the Holy Land and to perish there, as prophesied by Ezekiel. Otherwise, Apok 20 and 8, that's Revelation 20 and 8, that Apok stands for apocalypses. Apocalypses is a Greek word for revelation. Equally with Magog, seems to be the name of a region, not of a prince, as among the Arabians. Okay, Gog and Magog in Revelation belong to a different time to those spoken of in Ezekiel. You see that? So that it is in vain to point out a discrepancy. Okay, I think they were actually going off here, but what I'm saying is that the original sons of Japheth are not the actual people being prophesied in Revelation chapter 20, if that makes sense. Now let's get Magog. This is also the Hebrew definition of Magog that we got in Genesis chapter 10, and not the one in Revelation chapter 20 and verse 8. So it says Magog, 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 land of Gog. See, land of Gog. So Magog is a land. It's not referring to the son of Japheth. Okay. See, that's why you have two different nouns here being used. One of them is the second son of Japheth, which is what we read about in Genesis chapter 10. But in Revelation chapter 20, it's referring to a land. It says a mountainous region between Cappadocia and Media, and the habitation of the descendants of Magog, son of Japheth and grandson of Noah. Okay. Bara's northern region. Okay. Anything else we need here? Yeah, let's see. It says of a son of Japheth, Genesis 10 and 2, also of a region and a great and powerful people of the same name, inhabiting the extreme recesses of the north, who are at some time to invade the Holy Land. Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39. We are to understand that the same nations as the Greeks comprise under the name of the Scythians. Okay? Or the Scythians, excuse me. Now, just seeing this here actually makes me want to go somewhere else, because it says we are to understand just the same nations as the Greeks. Okay, speaking of the Greeks, let's go here. Let's go to a classic. This is the book of First Maccabees, chapter 1, and in verse 1. It says, and it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Kittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece. So Alexander the Greek, he came out of the land of Kittim, which is another Japhetic name/land. Okay, this is Strong's H3794. Kittim. It says pronunciation Kitti or Kittim. Kittim, bruisers, a general term for all islanders of the Mediterranean Sea. And then B says the descendants of Javan, the son of Japheth and grandson of Noah. Now it says here, patriarch from an unused name denoting Cyprus or Kitti, hence an islander in general, because that's who the sometimes brothers ask, who is Japheth today? It'd be those Pacific Islanders. Okay. But anyways, it says, i.e., the Greeks or Romans on the shores opposite Palestine. So this is where I'm getting at here. I mean, this could be a whole separate lesson too, but what I'm getting at here is that the land known as Greece was originally inhabited by Japhetic people. And then after the Japhetic people, which were people of color, by the way, just to let you know, Japhet was, you would consider them as a so-called black today, but not as in an Israelite, meaning a person of color. All of Noah's sons were men of color because Noah was a man of color. Okay, all three of his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Okay, so the Japhetic people, they were in that land known as Greece. They were the original Greeks. And then you had Israelites and Phoenicians that took over that land too as well, known as the Dorians, and they went by other names too as well. But what I'm getting at is what the so-called white man will do, or Esau, he will take over a land and then call himself the name of the land or the people that he conquered. He does that all the time. For example, Ashkenaz. So Ashkenaz was originally, when I say Ashkenaz, I mean the actual man, Ashkenaz, the son of Gomer, Ashkenaz. You see where his land originally was here? Okay. Up there by the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, up here by the Mediterranean. And you see Kittim right here. See Kittim right there? This is where the original Japhites, where their land used to be. But when a so-called white man comes and take over and conquers, when he comes to take over and conquers, he normally will name himself after the land that he's conquered. All right. Or the name of the settlement. He goes by geography a lot versus sea lines, because really, to me, the so-called white man, he hates his name so much because he knows, that he's the man that the Most High will have indignation for forever. Okay, therefore Esau, or the so-called white man, that's what I'm getting at here, he does take the name of the land that he conquers. Even if he understands his history, because a lot of times, our people have done that too, but half of those times it's because we didn't even really understand who we were as a people, because we forgot, or we stopped keeping the Most High statute, laws, and commandments, and lost ourselves as a people, or we wouldn't be here calling ourselves African American. But they'll even know their history. Like right now, they know their history, but due to prophecy, they can't tell you who they are. So I'm saying all that to say, when we go here and we read about Gog and Magog, again, why does it not just say Esau? Okay, because everything is not going to be written plainly in the scriptures. Okay, in Matthew chapter 13, it tells you that, and let's just go to it really quickly. I mean, this is kind of basic, but for brothers and sisters that may not know. Okay, it says here, Matthew chapter 13 and verse 10, and the disciples came and said unto him, why speakest thou unto them in parables? He answered and said unto them, because it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it is not given. Okay, so everything in the scriptures is not going to be written in plain upon tables. Okay, sometimes it's going to be in parabolic form. So Gog and Magog, or the prince of Magog, is referring to Esau because of a geographical location, not because of a sea line. You understand? It's not going to be, the Japhetic people that's going to come up to try to rule Israel, at least leading the pack, because it's going to be more than one nation. But the nation that's going to be leading that attack is going to be the Edomites. Okay, the so-called white man. That's who's going to be leading this attack that we're going to see, or this battle that we're reading about here in Revelation chapter 20, verses 7 through 10. Okay? So that's not the only time, too, by the way. You have Ashkenaz, Rome. They call themselves Romans when that's not even a city line. They start calling themselves Greeks. And now you have today the Ashkenazi Jews, which they're just from that land, but they're not actual they're not actual Japhetic people. Okay, and that's what confuses a lot of brothers and sisters today, where they think that the so-called white man is, he's Japhetic, or he's from Japhite, or from Japheth, but he's not. Okay, that doesn't make sense. Let me know, because again, we could get so much more on that, but I just wanted to explain why it even says Gog and Magog in the first place. All right. Now, let's get this next. Let's get the Ezekiel chapter 39, and then we'll start at verse 1. Therefore, thou son of man, prophesy against Gog, and say, Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I am against thee, O GOG, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and I will turn thee back and leave but the sixth part of thee, and will cause thee to come up from the north parts, and will bring thee upon the mountains of Israel. So, if you see here, the north parts, this is Magog. This is the same kind of map here, just of course separated differently. But you see where Israel is? Magog is up to the north. The Caucasus Mountains is up towards the north. So you're going to have all these nations try to come down and attack the children of Israel. All right. During the 1,000-year rulership. All right. At least in my perspective, because I'm going to show you why I said that this is not before, Christ comes back, and it's afterwards. Okay. One of the main reasons I believe that, we're about to read that here coming up. Okay. Let's get verse 3. And I will smite thy bow out of thy left hand, and will cause thine arrows to fall out of thy right hand. Thou shalt fall upon the mountains of Israel, thou and all thy bands, and the people that is with thee, the other nations. And I will give thee unto the ravenous birds of every sort, and to the beasts of the field to be devoured. Thou shalt fall upon the open field, for I have spoken it, saith the Lord power. Now, it says here, and I will send a fire on Magog, and among them that dwell carelessly in the isles, and they shall know that I am the Most High. So will I make my holy name known in the midst of my people Israel, and I will not let them pollute my holy name anymore. And the heathen shall know that I am the Lord, the Holy One in Israel. Matter of fact, let's go back to Ezekiel chapter 38. And then let's get verse 8. This is one of the pivotal verses here that helps you understand the time period that Revelation chapter 20, verses 7 through 10, the time period that it actually takes place in. Okay, Ezekiel chapter 38 and verse 8 says, After many days thou shalt be visited. Okay, after many days, 1,000 years. In the latter years thou shalt come unto the land that is brought back from the sword. That's Israel, the land that is brought back from the sword, and is gathered out of many people against the mountains of Israel, which have been always waste. But it is brought forth out of the nations, and they shall dwell safely, all of them. Okay, so the children of Israel will already be in the land, dwelling safely. Okay, now if this battle that is going to take place in Revelation chapter 20, verses 7 through 10, if that takes place before Christ comes back, then how will the children of Israel already be in the land dwelling safely? Okay. And it says that again here in verse 11 in Ezekiel chapter 38. And thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages. I will go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls and having neither bars nor gates. So again, before Christ comes back, there's going to be the tribulation that he has to save us out of, right? It tells us that in Daniel chapter 12. Let's get that real quick. It says Daniel chapter 12 and verse 1. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people, the children of Israel, and there shall be a time of trouble. That's Jacob's trouble. okay, or the great tribulation, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time, thy people shall be delivered. Okay, at that time, they shall be delivered from Jacob's trouble. Everyone that shall be found written in the book. We're going to talk about that in a second too, being written in the book. But, we can get Revelation chapter 20. Revelation chapter 2 as well. But Christ told us many times that those that endure unto the end shall be saved. Okay, meaning after the tribulation or endure past the tribulation, those are going to be the the chosen to be saved out of the tribulation. So again, since I know that's going to be the state of our people before Christ comes back, how is it that this is saying that the children of Israel will be dwelling safely within the land once this last battle commences? Okay. How is that the case? How is that the case? So that's one of my main things there. I don't see how that kind of adds up. I think that you have the day of the Lord, okay, when Christ comes back, and then you also have this last attack, which is not going to be as major as the day of the Lord. Okay, you have the first death when Christ comes back. He's going to destroy all the kings of the earth. And then you have this last battle too as well. That first battle is, the valley going to be taken, near the valley of Jehoshaphat, where you're going to have Esau basically going to try to combat the angels. But we don't read that same account in Revelation chapter 20. Okay. So let's keep moving forward. Because again, hopefully this makes sense. If I need to, go back over something else, just of course let me know, and I'll do that. Even if I have to make an additional part, I'll do that. Just let me know. Okay. Anyways, let's read verse 8 again. And shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, GOG and MAGOG, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And they went up on the breadth of the earth and compassed the camp of the saints about, and the beloved city. And fire came down from the Most High out of heaven and devoured them. Okay, so as we see, GOG and MAGOG, or GOG, which is the prince of MAGOG, and those about with him, is going to compass the camp of the saints about, because they're already going to be in the land dwelling safely. Okay, and fire came down from the Most High out of heaven and devoured them. Just like you had in Sodom and Gomorrah, you're going to have that fire that's going to rain down. Okay, that's going to destroy, Esau and the other nations that's going to try to come with him. Okay, and then at this time, this is where you're going to have the end of Esau. Okay, there's going to be a wrap. It's going to be a wrap, man. Let's get that real quick. Let's get Obadiah chapter 1. And this is the only chapter, so verse 18. And the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, and the house of Esau for stubble, and they shall kindle in them and devour them. You see that same word being used. And devoured them. Hint, hint. Okay. And there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau or GOG of MAGOG, for the Lord hath spoken it. Okay, so Esau is not going to be fully destroyed when Christ first comes back. He's going to be sent into captivity. Where did I get that from? Let's get that too. let's get Isaiah chapter 13. And then let's start with verse 9. It says, Behold, the day of the Lord cometh, cruel both with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it. That's when Christ first comes back. Okay. Verse 10, For the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. What does this mean? This means that the knowledge and wisdom of this world, all the different lies and the games that they play is going to be, brought to an end. Because once you have Christ comes back, once you have Christ that is going to come back, and he comes back, then at that point, you all these different doctrines and beliefs that's out, it's not going to make any more sense. It's not going to matter once everybody knows what's up. See what I mean? So who's going to care about who's a Democrat or a Republican and who's woke and who's not woke once you see the Messiah actually returning and causing havoc on this place? Okay, so it says the stars of heaven, meaning those kings of earth on high. Okay, and they shall not give their light. The sun's going to be darkened. The law is likened into a lamp, into a light. And light is also, on the left-hand side too as well. Lucifer means the light bearer. All right. So that light on the left-hand side is going to be darkened. This is not referring to Yahushua because he's going to be shining bright. All right. The knowledge and wisdom on the right-hand side is going to be illuminated. All right. All of the knowledge and wisdom on the left-hand side is going to be darkened. Okay. Verse 11, and I will punish the world for their evil and the wicked for their iniquity. And I will cause the arrogancy of the proud to cease and will lay low the haughtiness of the terrible. Okay. This is how Yahushua is going to come back and reign. Verse 12, I will make a man more precious than fine gold, even a man than the golden wedge of Ophir. Okay, you can read about that in Zechariah, the 12th chapter. That talks about even the small will be likened to King David. Verse 13, therefore I will shake the heavens, and the earth shall remove out of her place in the wrath of the Lord of hosts, in the day of his fierce anger. Okay, where it says the heavens is referring to the rulership. This current rulership that's in place is going to be shaken. Okay, and the earth shall remove out of her place, referring to this kingdom. All right, or the power of this kingdom, like it says in Luke, the 21st chapter. The power of the heavens shall be shaken. Okay. Now, verse 14, the point. And it shall be as the chase roe, and as a sheep that no man taketh up. They shall every man turn to his own people, and flee every one into his own land. So everyone is going to be going back to their own land. We already went over, and I believe it was the last part, how the nations will be taken into captivity. Okay. So I believe there's one verse that I thought of that we didn't get last time, I believe, in I believe it's here in Jeremiah chapter 13. Slaki in chapter 30. Let's get Jeremiah chapter 30 and verse 16. It says, therefore, all they that devour thee shall be devoured. There's that word again. And all thine adversaries, every one of them, shall go into captivity. And where are they going to go into captivity at? Their own lands. And they that spoil thee shall be a spoil, and all that prey upon thee will I give for a prey. Okay? So that's how GOG of MAGOG, aka Esau, aka the so-called white man, is even going to be up here in the Caucasus Mountains. Okay? then he's going to come back down to try to fight the children of Israel in his jealousy and hatred. And that's why he has to be destroyed. Why do you think the Most High said that none, there shall be any remaining of the house of Esau? Because of what transpires in Revelation chapter 20, verses 7 through 10. That's why. Okay. Not just because, of course, the Most High hates Esau. All right. But he is a righteous God. So his judgment is sure. There's going to be a reason that the Most High does this, not just because he hates Esau, but because of his works. Giving Esau a chance, and then he still, is just going to go off. And that's why the Most High said all the things that he said about Esau anyways. Okay, that they have no place for repentance. All right. So here's one last excerpt here that's going to tell us, the time period that the event in Revelation chapter 20, verses 7 through 10 takes place. Now it says here in Revelation chapter 19, it says the coming of Christ. Let's start at verse 11 and read on down. It says, "And I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse. And he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True. And in righteousness he doth judge and make war." Verse 12, "His eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns. And he had a name written that no man knew but himself." Verse 13, "And he was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood. And his name is called the Word of the Most High." Verse 14, "And the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses, clothed in fine linen, white and clean." Or clothed in fine linen, white and clean. So this is referring to the day of the Lord, the day when Christ makes his second coming. And the armies are the angels. Okay. Fall upon him upon white horses. The white horses are the chariots. That's the craft that the angels will be in, causing havoc on this place. Okay. Clothed in fine linen, white and clean, meaning pure, because they're going to be following the statute, laws, and commandments. All right. Bidding the judgment of the Most High upon this land. All right. And it says many crowns, because Yahushua is going to take over all nations of people. All right. Anything else? That's pretty much it there. And then let's get verse 15. "And out of his mouth goeth a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations." That sharp sword is going to be referring to, or is going to be, and it's in reference to not only the word, which is a sharp sword, but also physically, meaning the beams that's going to come out the chariots to burn this place up, man. Jack these people up, which that could be me too. So I'm not excluding myself out of that number. But it says, "And he shall rule them with a rod of iron, and he treadeth the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of almighty power." What does that mean? The winepress, meaning that's how much blood is going to be shed. It's going to be like a winepress. Okay, now, one thing you notice too is that the description of this event is a lot different than what we read about in Revelation chapter 20, verses 7 through 10. All right, I know I've said that many times, but it's because I'm trying to be, descriptive here, so it won't be as confusing. But as you see, you didn't see anything about the wine press and things of that nature when you read Revelation chapter 20, verses 7 through 10, and Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39. You don't see all of these things being mentioned because they're two different events, at least in my perspective. All right, verse 16, "And he hath on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords." Verse 17, "And I saw an angel standing in the sun," meaning to the east, And he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven, come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great power. Again, this is not mentioned in those accounts that I just mentioned. Do I need to say it again? I will. In Revelation, the 20th chapter, verses 7 through 10, and Ezekiel 38 and 39. Okay. And by the way, the fowls, I see brothers say that the fowls are literally referring to, the crows and things of that nature, but no, this is actually referring to the angels. Okay. The angels are known to be, known to have wings, and sometimes they're described as eagles too as well. I believe in Job, the 39th chapter, they're referred to as eagles. Okay. I was going to grab that, but it's not part of the lesson. I'll put it on the screen. Okay. And then let's see. Verse 18. That ye may eat the flesh of kings, and the flesh of captains, and the flesh of mighty men, and the flesh of horses. Now, actual horses, unless, Esau will be coming with them horses, referring to the craft that they're going to be flying to. Okay. And of them that sit on them, and the flesh of all men, both free and bond, both small and great. So once Yahweh comes back, with those angels, everybody that's left remaining, they're going to know at that point, they're going to, they already got this operation in plan. All right, plan, take down the nigger king. Commemorate, plan, take down the nigger king. And then they just going to come, with all their different, and what's the name of those, high powered jets and stuff. Esau gonna bring out all his militia at that time. Okay, and all the men, from the small to the great. All right, they're all gonna be in on this, trying to take down the angels that's coming in, that's coming in the chariots, man. All right, but it's gonna be a flawless victory. This scene right here is described in the movie Independence Day, except that it's really the angels that are righteous. Okay. So, of course, in these movies, they reverse the roles because they want you to think when the aliens come, they're bad. Let's attack them. That's why it says the small and the great. They're going to be trying to kill the angels, man, but it's going to be futile. That's why they have all these angel sightings and stuff now that, people are saying under oath that they are 100% sure and confirm that there are aliens. They trying to prep people to, accept that there will be, foreign entities that will be invading this land. Just like you read about in the book of Habakkuk, the 3rd chapter. Okay, the invasion. All right. Anyways, verse 19, and I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse and against his army, the angels. Okay. And that that chariot that Yahweh gonna be in, man, it's gonna be something else, man. But now let's get to the point, because I didn't want to go all the way into the day of the Lord, because that can be its own lesson too as well. But I did want to touch on this, and this is one of the last things that, in my perspective, kind of seals the deal of the time period that Revelation chapter 20, verses 7 through 10, what time period it takes place. It says, doom of the beast and false prophet. Now, verse 20, and the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast. Okay, now watch this. And them that worshiped his image. Those both were cast alive into a lake of fire burning with brimstone. So after Yahweh comes back, the beast and the false prophet is going to be cast alive into the lake of fire burning with brimstone. Okay. What does that mean? The beast, which is going to be, the EU, all right, the nations that conspire together against the children of Israel to take over this land, all right, they're going to be destroyed. That's going to be all taken out. NATO, EU, all the nations described in Psalms, the 83rd chapter, they're going to be taken, taken out of power. That's what it means by, put into the lake of fire burning with brimstone. They're going to be destroyed. And the false prophet, all right, we talked about who the false prophet was last time. All right. They're going to be destroyed. But it says they're going to be in the lake of fire burning with brimstone. But when we read here, let's get verse 10 in Revelation chapter 20. What does it say? And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone. So the devil, aka Satan, aka the so-called white man or Esau, is going to be cast into the lake of fire and brimstone. That's when he's going to be destroyed, as prophesied by Obadiah in the 18th verse. You see? Where the beast and the false prophet are, meaning they're already going to be there. So how is it that this is in the past if the beast and the false prophet that we just read about directly, that's going to be put into the lake of fire in the event that happens in Revelation, the 19th chapter, if they're already in there, meaning the beast and the false prophet are already in the lake of fire, and that happened before, how are they already there? You see? Let me know if that makes sense. It says, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. Okay, because the nations, their the pact that they have, like I said, the EU, those nations, and the Pope, and all these different, the international bankers, all that's going to be done away with when Yahushua comes back. All that power is going to be taken away from them. However, you still will have nations left over. Okay. Esau will not be eradicated at that point upon Yahushua coming back. Okay. However, at this time, that's when that's going to take place. And then he's going to be cast where the beast and the false prophet are. Okay. And then it's going to be done at that point. For the brothers and sisters that, want Esau to be done away with, well, here you go. It's going down. All right. That's pretty much it. Yes, I am claiming that the so-called white man will be destroyed, devoured forever. Yes, I am saying that, to be direct. I'm not trying to be indirect here or, play around with it. I'm saying it, straight up. That's what it is. But it ain't my words. I'm just reading the Bible here. So if you got a problem with it, hey, it is what it is. Not my words. It's the Most High's words. So then after verse 10, we then go into the judgment. Okay. Now we're going to finish up here. In the last part, we'll go over the judgment, meaning verses 11 through 15. I don't think it'll take as long, so let's go ahead and wrap this up. And I think I'm going to break this up into two parts. So see you, brothers and sisters, in the next one. Lord willing, this was edifying. Until the next time, I bid you a mighty shalom.